Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm glad you're here. Today I'm using a Christmas tree stamp and a sentiment banner from a stamp set by Close to My Heart. And it's called Believe in Christmas Holiday D1666, and it's from My Acrylics by Close to My Heart. I have a black card base that I've already pre-cut and two pieces of very inexpensive watercolour paper that I bought from my dollar store, one to layer inside and one for the top piece. I'm going to be using a die from the Deckled Rectangles die set from Stampinup. It has about 7 dies in it. I'm using the largest die. And I'm using Versafine Onyx Black Ink, which is permanent and waterproof. Now I'm cutting out the rectangles with my Big Shot. And you can see the beautiful deckle that it gives. It looks really professional. I love this deckled edge die. And I'm just running the second piece through. So this very inexpensive paper is quite thin and it's cold pressed. Cold pressed paper means that it has quite a rough texture to it. The other two main types of watercolour paper are hot pressed, which is very smooth, or rough, which is much more textured. Now, while I'm lining up my stamps on my stamping platform here, I'll give you a tip for remembering what hot press or cold press means, because sometimes people do get confused. Think of when you're ironing. The iron is hot and it makes your fabric smooth. So hot press will be smooth, and rough or cold pressed means that it has a texture or wrinkles in it, if we use the ironing analogy. Okay, so here's the ink going on, and I'm using quite a bit here. And I'm making sure that I wipe up any that over inks on the edges there. I don't want that going on my work. Now with watercolour paper, particularly with cold pressed watercolour paper, you do have to pay a bit of attention to your stamping. Hot pressed paper is good because it's smooth. It goes on much quicker and easier. But I really want to use this cold pressed paper for my sparkle technique that I'm adding to the card later. It needs to be textured in order for the technique to work. So I'm going to put some extra care into stamping again and again using my stamping platform or stamp positioner so that I can restamp the same image over and over, and just work at rubbing areas where it seems a bit light. If you were using smooth cardstock, you could stamp this in one pass, but because I need the rough texture for the sparkle effect, I'm taking extra care and just putting a bit more effort into those areas that I really want the ink to absorb into this textured paper. One of the mistakes I see people make with this method too is that they will just keep adding more and more ink. And although it does need some more ink at this stage in the centre there, I'll add a little bit. But once I feel there's enough ink on the stamp, rather than adding more ink, I can just open and close and add more pressure to each area that needs a little bit more pressure. Otherwise, you'll end up with a blobby mess. And that has stamped beautifully. You can see all the detail in that tree. There's lovely little angels and baubles and ornaments on the tree. It's just delightful. Now here's the magic weapon. This is a Wink of Stella brush. This is clear. When you get these brushes and you first use them, there'll be a coloured ring around the middle. You just open it up, discard the ring, and then your pen will work. I'm using my favourite glue, Tombow Multi Adhesive. I like this glue because it gives you some wiggle room to be able to move your work around. With this glue, you don't need to squeeze any of it out. And once I've opened it, I usually store these glues upside down so gravity will help it work. I like putting a few little dots in each corner. And you can see there's only a very small amount of glue that I'm using there. And if it's not completely straight when you first lay it down, you can slide it around a little before it dries. It just gives you a few seconds of wiggle room to get it nice and straight, as I'm doing there. I'm going to lay down a tissue to put the cover on. I've been making lots of watercolour art on my desk all week long, some quite large paintings. So I'm not sure I got all the paint off. I did clean my desk, but I can't assure you that it has every last skerrick of paint off it. So I'm just using a tissue underneath to protect the surface of the card. And this would be a lovely card just as it is. You could leave it at that as a simple black and white card. It's very elegant, clean and simple, but I want to take it to the next level with a new technique that I have discovered with the Wink of Stella pens. I'm going to pair my card with a nice bright red envelope. These are envelopes I purchased at Officeworks. They are by Quill, and it's a nice Christmas red. So that'll be my envelope. So with a Wink of Stella, this is the way you would normally use them. You would normally just colour in on the top and it would give a nice sort of shimmer. But I'm going to use a rather radical new technique where I'm going to squeeze a quite large amount of the clear Wink of Stella onto my paper. You can see how wet that's become now. And it's starting to develop a real sheen across the black and turning it into a silvery colour. The other thing that's happening, because this is cold pressed watercolour paper and quite thin, as I add some water to it with my large brush, I'm putting quite a bit of water on there, the paper is starting to buckle a bit. But because it is glued to the front cover, it's not going to cause any problems other than making the tree look a bit more rounded. So the tree's actually bumping forward with the water that's been added. And it's a really fun look. I'm just going around the outside with my Wink of Stella pen, not squeezing at all, just doing some fine detail work on the edge and pushing all of the rest of that shimmery silver out towards the end of the tree, getting all those fine details nicely finished off. And it's changed the colour of the tree. So the tree's no longer black. It's a lovely champagne silver colour. And I can imagine this would work with the gold or the bronze or the silver Wink of Stella pens as well. But just with the clear on the black, it looks absolutely gorgeous. It's almost a pewtery colour. It's lovely. And it has that rounded effect, which may not be showing up so well on camera, but in real life, it's showing up really well and gives it an added dimension. Such a simple technique, but something very different, using cold press paper and lots of water. You might be able to see the sheen a bit better there. I'll hold it up and just show you again. Now it's dry. As you can see how it's almost got that pewter, silver, gorgeous tone to it. And the tree is dimensional. It's actually rounded out somewhat. The rest of the paper is flat, but the tree is a little bit more rounded. So it looks as though it's been embossed. The great thing about mixed media is you're always making new discoveries by accident, and this is one of my favourite accidents lately, is that adding lots of water to cold pressed watercolour paper that is very thin and very inexpensive means it's going to just round out the shape that you've watercoloured. So there's my card finished. I couldn't be happier with it. I just think it was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed that today. Let's have some snowflakes to celebrate. And I'll look forward to seeing you again next time. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I would really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.